righty. Hey, everybody. It is episode 33 of Eat, Drink, Write, an Urban Fantasy Whiteboard. Today, we're going to be talking about adding depth to your novel. We've been drinking and talking for the past. She got home from work, and it's now 6:10.
It's okay. We've only been drinking for like an hour. It's fine.
Yeah, so this is going to be an interesting episode. But we had a lot to catch up on. So on that note, how was your week?
It was pretty good. I'm back at work full time now, which is both a blessing and a curse. I like having somewhere to be all day. I like being outside of my apartment. It's nice. It's much better than just being cooped up all the time. The downside is that still most of my lab is not back. They're all students and I'm an employee. So I am required to be there under terms of the university, but students are still free to, be wherever they want to be. So a lot of the time they're not there, and, I don't really have that much to do. So I work on my writing, which means I've written over 2,000 words this week. So
awesome.
Yeah. So I'm hoping it would be really cool to finish this draft, I think before the end of the year, because that would mean that I had finished 2 drafts of 2 different books in the same year, and I've never done that before. So
that would be awesome.
That would be pretty bomb.
Yeah.
That's the goal right now, and it's August, so I think it's a pretty good goal because I'm at 44,000 words.
Are you going to do NaNoWriMo? Not Rhino Nano?
Potentially, actually, yeah. I didn't do it last year because I had just started grad school, plus I was working full time, and I felt really overwhelmed by all of that, and so I didn't do it at all last year. But this year is a lot different because it's 2020. So
yeah, enough said on that one. I think you do it the year before that though, and you did you really did it.
I did do it the year before. I ended up writing 55,000 words.
Yeah.
So I've completed over half of the MacBook, which is the one that I'm now querying. So
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that would be cool. That's not too far around the corner. October, we're August, so
I know it's gonna be super soon.
Yeah.
Also, I did this thing this week. So my friend Jess is an artist, and every now and then she'll do a redraw of a picture that she did years ago. And so she showed me what she was working on, and obviously there was improvement because it was years and years ago that she had drawn this picture. And I was like, I should do that with some of my writing. And I do these things called that I call sentence writing, where I get a sentence from someone and I write a page and I have to get that in the page. So I took one from 2016 and rewrote it. And I thought it was better. I sent it to Jess, and she was like, it's incredible how much improvement there is. So it was a lot of fun to do. That was something that I did this week, and I thought it was a really good writing exercise, and I was bored at work, so I went ahead and did it, and it was awesome. So
I'm so jealous that you're able to do writing stuff. Right now is really, really crazy with work.
Yeah.
I'm in charge of the court thing, and every day we realize, with COVID, things are changing and things aren't going to work, and so we'll have to. The good part of that is that I'm in charge, so if something needs to change, I can say, okay, we're changing this. Right. The bad part is I'm the one that has to do all of that. So it's been crazy. I think last time on Friday, we had done an episode, and I was having issues with the judge and getting a defendant from jail and all of that stuff. So that case went great. We did that Monday. It's all good. Court, I have 5 days of virtual court next week, and I am in charge of all of that. And
I'm just glad it's virtual though, because I feel like it needs to be virtual right now. The way that Georgia's numbers are looking, I feel like we just need to be virtual. So.
Yeah, Jordan, your little sister, started school this week, and luckily we're all virtual. She's a high school student. She's a sophomore in high school.
Not Jordan, right?
Oh, did I say the wrong name?
You did.
Oh. Too many. I have 4 kids, y'all. Give me a break.
There are too many of us. I have too many sisters.
Yeah, and they're all girls.
Yes.
Their dad calls them number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4. So there you go. I just call them all by the wrong name. Riley started school, and I wondered why your face was having this odd look on.
No, that's just my normal face.
No, it was a confused face, like, Mom, what are you saying? But yeah, she went back to school this week virtually. Georgia is where we live, and there have been, so Cherokee County in Georgia, they went back to school in person. There's now 1,000 people in quarantine from those schools, students and teachers. We're all struggling. It's, no
Yeah.
one knows how this is gonna work, but luckily my county, Gwinnett County, was fully virtual,
Yeah.
which it's easy for me to say that. I've got a 14-year-old who is totally self-sufficient. So,
Yeah.
it's not like I've got a 5-year-old trying to learn kindergarten stuff by
That's
herself,
hard.
because I have to work. So
Yeah,
I,
that's extremely difficult. I feel like it would be, it's one thing to have a 5-year-old, first of all. Second of all, you've got them at home 24/7, and you have to help teach them, what they're trying to learn in school. So
yeah,
it is really rough.
you can't just sit them in front of a computer and say, okay, I'm going to go work over here. They don't have that discipline to be able to. Oh. So
Yeah.
I feel for all those parents. I don't know what they're doing. We're
Yeah.
lucky in our household. What are you eating and drinking?
Well, so I ate my food because we've been talking for a while.
I'm eating my food too.
But I made a ham and cheese grilled sandwich, but I did it on my waffle iron. So that was a lot of fun. I recently just pulled it out. So I've had this waffle iron for like years, and I've never used it because I don't know. I have recipe books for it and everything. I just haven't used it. And my girlfriend came over one day and she's like, you know what? I want waffles. And I was like, well, I have a waffle maker. And so we ended up making waffles. And ever since then, I've used it for more waffles or for sandwiches and that kind of thing. So I made a ham and cheese waffle sandwich. And then I am drinking my usual White Claw, and today's flavor is mango. So,
Mango. Ooh.
yeah, it's pretty good. It's pretty yummy. So.
I am eating, well, I kind of made a feast for dinner. I told Daddy I was going to be making some jalapeno cheese crisps, which is cheese, and you bake these jalapeno slices with onion powder, my mouth is watering, and garlic powder and olive oil, and then you put them on these, my mouth is watering, on these cheese things, and you bake them until the cheese melts into a crisp.
Yeah.
So you have these little crisp cracker looking things with a jalapeno right on top of it.
Oh my God.
Amazing. And he's like, let's do a whole dinner with these things. So I ended up making the jalapeno cheese crisps. I know I'm having trouble speaking. I made little cucumber, avocado, shrimp things.
Yeah.
We're having jalapeno poppers, which he's actually up there making right now.
Oh, I'm so jealous. Those things are so good. They're so simple, and I'm gonna have to make some. They're just delicious.
I mean,
They're
so
good.
basically we're having a football food dinner. This is the kind of stuff we do Saturdays when college football's going on. And this is what draws all my children home, is when I make all this food, which this year, 2020, is a totally different year. I don't think I'll have kids home. I don't even know that we'll have football this year. I mean,
Although I know I'm already debating, my birthday is coming up, and I don't even know that I'll come home for that to celebrate that. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah.
Oh, but I'm drinking. I didn't say what I was drinking.
Yes. What are you drinking?
It's already almost gone. This is like my third drink, y'all. I'm drinking the kamikaze that I wanted to drink the last time when I got distracted by my usual brute wine.
Yeah.
So I have a Bartesian drink machine, and it's this little machine that you have your own liquor in all these different containers, and they come with these little capsules, and you put the capsule in and it makes you this drink. And most of them are not very keto friendly, and they just came out with a whole bunch of new stuff. And this one is the kamikaze, which is basically lime and vodka and an orange flavor.
Yeah.
And it is fabulous, and it's a lower carb than other drinks. It's not super low, but it's lower than like what your margarita that you like so much out of that machine is like 12 to 13 grams of carbs, which is more than half of my intake for the day. So this is like 7 carbs.
That's fantastic.
Although I'm on drink number 3, so yeah. But dinner is going to be these little football things, which are totally keto. So, we're all good.
Well, there you go.
So I have a joke.
Oh, of course you do. I'm like surprised by this every week, and I shouldn't be. Hit me with this joke, please.
It's
Please
it's
tell
a
me your
really
joke.
bad one. I couldn't find anything good. And our listeners aren't helping me out.
All right,
So
listen. To be fair, the bad ones are really great. I like the bad one as much as I roll my, and I'm gonna roll my eyes at this one. I already know I will. But as much as I do that, they're fantastic, and I love them. So
okay, it's bad.
get,
Why did the writer cross the road?
why?
She was supposed to be editing her book, so she crossed the road to run some errands, go for a quick walk, and maybe buy a new toaster.
Why a toaster?
Well, when we're supposed to be writing or doing our editing or whatever we're supposed to be doing, we find anything else that we can do. Check the
Including
Twitter. Oh, I really need to check Twitter. So anyway, it was funny. It
including
wasn't
buy a
funny.
toaster. Next time I'm editing, I'll have to go buy a toaster.
Okay, clearly that was not a good joke. Y'all, please send me some jokes, okay? Okay, so today we're talking about adding depth in your novel. So, um, what are we talking about? What is depth? What is that? What does that mean?
What is depth? So what is depth when you're talking about a book or a novel or a story? And I think it's a sense that there are connections within the writing that are not explicitly put forward in sentences. So I feel like it's a lot of subtext. It's a lot of deeper meaning that's like not necessarily straightforward. So there's a lot more to the story than you're seeing. There's a lot more than meets the eye. That's a quote from something that I don't remember at the moment. But yeah, but shush. But it can apply to many different things, including characters, settings, scenes, relationships, and even backstories of your characters. And I feel like I've gotten this a lot, especially when you've read my stories. I get the feedback that's when you read my story or when a story is read, a common feedback is that it needs to have more depth.
Yeah, I mean, so haven't you read a book where you feel like it's just one dimensional, that you're just skipping across the top of this story and you're not getting that depth? You don't know the background of the character. You don't know the history of this world if it's fantasy. You don't know any of that. Everything's on the surface.
Yeah.
The story moves from plot to plot. There's a lot of action adventure movies that they go from action to action to action, but we never learn anything about those characters.
Right, the characters or the relationships, or even like where those actions are taking place, like the settings and that kind of thing.
And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I love action adventure stories. There is a time and a place for them, but we're talking about how do you get beyond this top level? How do you go deeper? How do you make your story deeper so that when someone's reading it, they're going, that was good, but they don't take away a deeper feeling from it. So that's what we're talking about.
Right. So how do you add depth? And I found a lot of stuff on this in this blog called killzoneblog.com. The article was 10 ways to add depth to your scenes, and it was written by Jody Renner. And she's an editor and an author. Just to toss out that citation, because I did get this information from there. It looked like a really great blog. They do a lot of writing stuff. Go check it out. Seems super cool. So the first point was, remember to show rather than tell, especially when introducing new characters. Showing will give you a sense of a character without being outright told who they are. So you don't have to tell people, oh, this is a very ambitious character. You can show that through their actions, and even through their dialogue, that they are a very ambitious person. Your reader will get to discover who your character is, which is similar to meeting people in real life. So, it adds that realistic angle to give your story some depth. You get to know a character as the story goes on, just like you would get to know a person if you meet them at work, kind of thing.
Which, and then on that note, I like people. I'm an extrovert, and so we'll go out on date night to a bar, and by the end of the night, I have talked to everybody in that bar. but it's a superficial thing. I don't know anything about those people. I don't know the depth of those people. And that is a sad thing sometimes, although I think your father's glad I don't know these people on a really deep level. But
Probably.
there is
Yeah.
a difference between knowing a character superficially and actually getting to know that character.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you're writing, if you gotta, okay, and it might be when you're revisioning. That's not the right word.
Revisioning.
Revising. That's the word. Wow.
Revisioning.
Kamikazes are awesome, y'all. You got to look for opportunities where you can go deeper, and usually this is when you're revising your work. It's not usually on the first. Okay, stop it. It's not usually on the first when you're writing to begin with. Wow, I am really having a hard time. I'm trying to say, look for opportunities to go deeper when you're revising
Yeah.
a scene. See, is there something is in this scene, can you give a little bit more detail?
Right. Is there something that could happen between those characters, or is there something that has happened between those characters? And I feel like you can show that in a lot of ways, and just to recognize that that is something that you can show in that scene, I think is important.
We did a showing versus telling episode, which I think is pertinent here. You know, it doesn't help. It's superficial to say, oh, he is an athlete. It's much better to show that this person, you know, oh my God, he just ran a 3-minute mile, you know,
Right.
something, show it rather than that does give more depth.
Yeah, I agree with that. Because it allows your reader, I think, to make those connections themselves. And to get your reader thinking about your work is kind of the point, with depth, at least. Yeah, so another way to add depth to your novel is to enhance your descriptions of the setting and other characters by filtering them through the mood, attitude, and reactions of the point of view character for the scene. And I think that's super cool. I thought a lot about Mercy Thompson with this. It's a first person book. And I feel like a lot of urban fantasy is, I write first person a lot, and you're seeing the world through that person's point of view. And so what they see is going to be, you know, potentially different than what you see, or potentially different than what their love interest sees or their antagonist sees, and that kind of thing. And that can add a lot of depth because you're getting a sense of that character without being told who that character is.
I think that's a good point, that when you're in first person point of view, you do get more depth automatically, but that doesn't mean that the third person omniscient or whatever can't also give you depth. But I hadn't thought of point of view, because you're inside that character's head. You can't get much more deep than that.
Right. No, I agree with that. And I agree with the third person thing too, especially with third person limited. You can get a lot of thought. Think of the Kresley Cole books. All of those are third person, and you get all of their thoughts, you get all of their worldviews, you get everything from that couple in that book, just based on, you know, how they view things.
I just feel like, I mean, when I read those, it's like their first person. I don't know how she does it. She is a brilliant writer to be able to have a third person narration and have us still feel like we're inside those characters' heads. She is absolutely brilliant. If you ever want to look at point of view and you're trying to write third person, go look at Kresley Cole. She is absolutely brilliant. She's kind of one of my heroes.
Absolutely. There's another book series that I read. It's a high fantasy Throne of Glass series by Sarah J. Maas. She also writes third person. Most books that I read are first person, just by the way, for people who are listening. I mostly read first person books. But the Throne of Glass series was really great, and it follows one character mostly through the series, but you get a sense of who that character is, what their thoughts are, how they view the world.
She's third person?
Yes.
I've read that, and I would never have remembered that it was. To me, it's first person because I am right there in her head. I know exactly what she's thinking. Wow, I didn't remember that.
Yeah,
it is an excellent series. Y'all should read that.
It's fantastic, and I think you get a lot of depth from the way that she writes those characters. And the fact that it is third person, you get to see a little bit from other characters' point of views as well, whereas you're a little bit more limited when you're writing from first person.
Absolutely, yeah.
So you get a lot more depth there by bringing in your character's point of view and seeing how they view things, what their mood is. If they're angry, they're obviously going to view things very different than, if they're very calm. So I thought that was a good point. And it gives a visual image of, whatever the character is looking at, and helps with character development. The main character's observations can help the reader figure out what the main character is focusing on and why that's important without like telling your reader what it is.
Yeah.
Also use the senses, which we talk about all the time in a lot of our episodes. Always use the senses. You can get across a lot of information using senses that are experienced by your main character. So, imagine your main character is colorblind. You can use that, and you can get across a lot of information using that. Also, just smells can trigger memories, and songs can trigger memories, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Is that thunder?
That was thunder.
We got thunder here, too. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it got dark. I didn't notice.
We're 40 miles apart from each other, and we're having thunder here, too.
Great. That means I get it forever. All of yours
depends on how I don't know which way it's moving. We may be getting yours.
True.
Slow down. Sometimes you're so anxious, and I am very guilty of this. I know what's supposed to happen next, and so I write this linear track to get to that point. I know what has to happen, so I go from point A to point B, not point A to okay. So yeah, you need to, and that's okay. There is nothing wrong with that. I do that all the time because it's in my head. I know what has to happen. So I write this really thin line.
I do that too. So you've read a lot of my drafts as I've written over the years. And one of the things that you said as you read, draft 1 to draft 2 was, I could very much tell where you added detail because, the first draft was skeletal, whereas the second draft, you added a lot of detail and dialogue and depth, a lot of depth to it. So
yeah, that's a perfect word, is skeletal. And sometimes you need to do that. Sometimes as a writer, you want to get that scene from A to B. And so you write it and it is skeletal, but you then go back and slow down and you add in, well, what were they wearing? Because sometimes you've just got to get that point across. I get that. I do that all the time.
Absolutely. I do it all the time on first drafts, and then I will go back, and I'm notorious for adding thousands of words just because I'm going back to fill in what I've written before and like make it deeper and make it more vivid.
What's interesting is the way we do this. You write the whole book a lot of times skeletal. You may have scenes that are very deep, but your whole book is skeletal first draft, whereas I write and I don't leave a chapter or a scene until it's still a first draft, but it's not skeletal. I rewrite and write and rewrite and write as I'm writing before I go on to the next thing.
Yeah.
And so I add a lot of depth at that phase. It's just, we're two different writers. We have
absolutely.
Yeah.
And like you said, I've got some in-depth scenes in my first draft, but a lot of the time I'm just writing to get to the end so that I can see the entire story. And once I know the entire story, I know how I want to change it. I know what plot points need to be changed. I know how the pacing needs to be changed. And then I can go back and I can add those details that will add the depth, like dialogue and little comments here and there that will, hint to the reader certain things that, might not be obvious.
And that's a good thing. I'm just a perfectionist. And so I'm not ready to move on to that next scene until I've added some of that depth.
I struggle a lot with that. I think that's why I ended up cutting 18,000 words. Writing skeletal drafts can be beneficial because it's fast. But a lot of the time I find myself getting stuck with writer's block. Like, I'm like, there's something wrong with it. I don't know what's wrong with it. I can't move forward until I figure it out. And then I cut 18,000 words and I'm, back to square one.
It's just a different way of doing things. There's no right way or wrong way to write. Every writer has their own way of doing things. And I don't feel comfortable leaving it skeletal. I go back and read, and I think we've talked about this before. Sometimes I go all the way back to the beginning and reread just so I can get that flow, and I add that depth as we go.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. And I think slowing down is a good point. I've talked about it before. We have a writer's journal episode, but that's why I use my journal, is because it makes me handwrite. And when I handwrite, I think a little bit slower, or not necessarily think slower, but it makes me think slower.
Yeah, because when we're typing, as fast as you can type, your brain can, you can go as fast as your brain can go, as fast as your little fingers can type. And
Absolutely.
I can type really, really fast. So you're right.
Yeah.
And writing, that is a very good idea. That is a very good way to slow yourself down and make you think
Right.
about your scenes and how to add depth and how to add all of that.
Absolutely. Which, like, if you look at my writer's journals, you'll see, like, I scribble out a lot of stuff too. So, like,
Oh, I found your journal.
oh, fabulous. I need that.
I know, at some point.
I should have grabbed it when I was home.
I know.
Yeah, but so slowing down, I think, is a good way to add some depth, because you're thinking about it more. There's just more thought that goes into it if you're not, zooming away. Another way is to show your main character's thoughts and feelings, show their reactions to people and events.
Yeah, I mean, don't just write the actions. I mean, I said that earlier, where with the action adventure movies where they go from action to action, go inside that person. What is the character thinking when that's happening? What are they feeling? How are they responding? That adds depth. It's so easy as a writer to just, this is the action that's happening. And we do. We get drawn into the action. Action is awesome. I am a big action adventure fan. But depth comes from exploring what that character is feeling because of that action, and
See,
what
I
is the
I
character.
think I'm really good at that part. I think I'm very good at delving into characters' thoughts and what they're feeling. I think I'm bad at action.
Really?
Or not necessarily bad at it, but I like delving into characters' emotions to the point where I'm afraid that I do it too much and, skimp out on action.
I just think of Louis and Delaney, and that is such a perfect book. I can't wait for you to finish and start pitching that thing, because it is brilliant.
I don't know how to pitch it.
It is, and that's a good sign too. I think when you have a book that is not the stereotypical book,
Yeah.
that's what publishers are going to want.
Right.
That book is brilliant. My daughter is brilliant. I am so proud of her. Yeah.
Thank you.
And you've got depth in that story, and you're rewriting it again.
I'm rewriting it for style.
Okay.
The story is going to stay the same. The story is all the same. But first of all, I noticed mistakes like, oh, she was standing, and then like later I said, oh, she stood up. That kind of stuff. So I'm rewriting it for those kind of errors. But yeah.
Okay, as long as the story stays the same, because both of those characters, there is depth. This episode is about depth, and we get so much depth in that story about both of those. You have two main characters, and I don't know. It is brilliant.
Thank you.
Yeah, that book, y'all, when I read it the first time, I was like, this was her first draft, and it was like picking a book off the shelf in a bookstore and reading it. To me, she has written a ton of books, but that book is my favorite. It's got a dear place in my heart.
I love it too. I really just don't know how to market it. I've tried to write a query letter for it, and it was really difficult, and I did not nail it.
I think that's a good thing. We've got to figure out how to do it, but the fact
I've noticed lately, so since I've joined Twitter and like have looked more into agents and querying and like all this kind of stuff, some Louis and Delaney is an LGBT book. It is an LGBT book, so that's a way that I can also get it on the market. A lot of agents are looking for that sort of thing. So there are ways that I could look into.
But there's so much more to it than just that. To me, that's
I agree.
That's secondary to it. Just happens to be that. I mean, love is
Absolutely.
love. So that doesn't even raise a blip on my radar. It is the writing that you've done, the character development you've done. Wow. I can't wait for our listeners to be able to read that book. It to
It is
me,
a good book.
it's your most brilliant masterpiece of all of your books, and I love all of your books.
Yeah.
And not just because I'm your mother.
Well, yeah.
I was making a point. Let's see. We were talking about. Oh, yeah. So going inside your characters' heads. You were talking about thoughts and feelings and reactions. Tell your characters secrets.
Yes.
That really deepens. Think. Okay, so we watch soap operas. We get drawn into soap operas, and a lot of that is because there's this deep dark secret that adds depth. Not that I'm saying that soap operas are a great way to go, but there is a reason why we all gravitate toward those things.
Yeah.
So tell your characters secrets. That adds depth. We're not no longer just skipping across the top with action to action.
Absolutely. I agree with that, especially because, when you learn someone's secrets, it's like, oh, I know something that no one else knows.
Yeah, it draws you in. Yeah.
And it absolutely adds a layer of depth. Another way to add some depth is just by using the dialogue, which we have a whole episode on dialogue. So, this dialogue can add to plot points, both close and background information. It adds to characterization. You can add a lot of subtext to your novel. The way characters speak to each other is very indicative of how they feel about each other. You can add a lot of information just through the way characters argue.
And to me, that's a really interesting way to get information across is through dialogue, because sometimes telling or even showing is boring. And
I agree, yeah.
Dialogue is a really exciting way. It's active. It's something that's happening right now. It's an active way to get across that depth and information.
Absolutely, especially between characters where, if you want them to be likable, then, your readers might want to hear more about like what that character has to say or that kind of thing. Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think dialogue in general is just important. And I know we did an episode on it. I'm sure there are more episodes that we could do on it.
Probably so.
Based on, how to add subtext via dialogue, that kind of thing. Another thing is to introduce suspense or heighten anticipation through the use of hints and innuendos or snippets of or fragments of information. Hints and innuendos are key here.
I agree. I mean, adding that subtext makes things just richer.
Yeah.
You keep your reader interested and engaged, and that's crucial to any story. The reader is literally engaging with the text and trying to, in their own minds, come up with that deeper meaning.
Yeah.
Any time that you can make your reader work, and I don't mean that in it as an automatic thing where you're laughing at me.
I am laughing. Well, so I wanted to just bring out, you and I specifically read the Fever series together.
Mm-hmm.
And, between books, we would be like, oh my God, I wonder what this is. And I wonder what this is. And I wonder who this could be. And I wonder, what kind of creature is that? It could be this and it could be this. And we would talk for hours about things that might be in that world. And I think that's exactly what you're kind of referring to here is like, she gave us so many hints and innuendos. We're like, oh, well, it could be this because of this, but it could be this because of this. And so
that adds so much richness to a story. I mean, for us to be able, and there's book clubs out there and that kind of thing. And to be able to question these things, and what do you think about this, and what do you
Yeah,
think about that, and maybe it's this. And I mean, that is so exciting, and that gets your reader engaged, and they're going to buy your next book.
absolutely. Yeah. No, I think that hits the nail on the head. That right there is depth, is getting
Yes.
the readers to think about what you're writing, as opposed to just taking it at face value kind of thing.
Yeah, Karen
Um,
Moaning is a perfect example.
yeah, we talk about her all the time.
And I number one, I hate when we have to wait a year in between books. But number two, I really enjoy discussing theories about, while we're waiting for that next book, we discuss, well, what if it's this and what if it's that? There is
Absolutely.
something to be said for that. I feel like maybe in the digital world, especially now that people are doing more self-published stuff, there should be less time in between.
I
Because
think there is for a lot of people. A lot of people,
I think
write their
so.
trilogy and then release it, within months of each other, which I think is pretty cool.
Which I think, I'm seriously considering doing Frickin' Fairies as a self-published book. And I, as a reader, I want books faster. I don't want to wait a freaking year to get the next book.
Yeah,
So, as a self-published author, I could do that.
absolutely. Yeah.
So
No, I think that's pretty cool. So,
I'm thinking about it. So
yeah. Um, yeah, so another thing you could do is use brief flashbacks, which I thought was really interesting because a lot of the time you hear not to use flashbacks, unless it's critical. It has critical information. But I think this goes back to what you were talking about with revealing your character's secrets. You really want to reveal who your character is, things that they know that no one else knows. That kind of thing, little by little, because you want to drag your reader in, to be like, oh, who is this person? Why do they know this secret? Oh, this secret is
yeah,
dangerous.
you
Blah blah
know,
blah.
along the lines of soap operas, that deep, dark past is intriguing. That's something that's very intriguing.
Yeah,
The past and history, that's an easy way to add depth.
yeah,
You know, you aren't just jumping from plot point to plot point, which I am very guilty of. The book I'm working on now, my very, very ever first book, epic fantasy, high fantasy, that's what I do. It is very, okay, I think I've said before, D&D is a very
yeah,
big part of my life. It was like a D&D jumping from point to point to point. You and action flicks do that, which I love action flicks.
yeah,
But you want to take the time to add that history to your characters and to the story, which I'm very excited. I haven't had a chance to work on my new book, and maybe after court next week, maybe a couple weeks from now, the episode, I'll be able to say, oh, I've been working on it.
yeah, yeah,
But subplots is also an important way to do this. We had we've had an episode on plots and subplots, and I think subplots add depth.
yeah. I would agree with that completely. It adds a lot more to the story.
Yeah, it adds a deeper understanding of the world. I mean, we write urban fantasy and fantasy. She's still laughing at me. Okay, I've finished my third drink now, so I'm working really hard. But subplots are huge. Um, I think about Kate Daniels when you said you were thinking about um, uh,
I've talked about Mercy Thompson and I've talked about Fever.
Presley Cole.
Oh, Kresley. Oh, I've talked about Kresley Cole. Yes.
So I'm going to cut all that out. So think about Kate Daniels. She is the one that I was thinking of when I was doing all the research for this.
Yeah, yeah,
That world is so intricate, from shifting between tech and magic. Oh my God, she did a huge, it was, talk about depth.
yeah. There was a lot there. She did a
She did
lot. Well,
depth. I mean,
they did a lot.
they did. I mean, not just the fact that they went into all these mythological stories. I mean, that's depth too,
Right.
but the depth of the actual world that's shifting between tech and magic, they give that to us through action, conversations, plans that the characters are making, dialogue. I mean, she would be asleep in bed and going, "Oh, it just shifted, and now I'm going to have to drive the actual tech car instead of the magic car." And
Right.
I mean that's depth.
Yeah. No, I agree. That series is fantastic, and most people who read urban fantasy, I feel like have probably heard of it. But it's Kate Daniels by Alona Andrews, and they add, and it's a husband and wife team that write it, and they add incredible depth to their stories, not just through the world, but also through emotions, and the way that Kate views the world. Because Kate is very, I don't want to say cynical, but she's a little bit cynical.
Well, she's broken too. I mean, think of the way she was raised and why
Right.
she was raised that way.
Right.
She's broken.
Yeah.
So yeah, we get depth in that series through her point of view, because that is not the point of view that you and I as a normal person would think.
Right.
Kate thinks of things, she's all fight, 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 let's go and attack it.
I mean, she's, I can solve all my problems with a sword.
Yeah,
There's a mystery. I just kill people until I find the right one.
I'm a very analytical person. I'm a lawyer, so I am trained to be analytical. So my approach to things is not at all what Kate Daniels' approach to things are. And that gives you that depth. We really get into that story.
Yeah.
Also, theme. We did an episode on theme.
Yeah.
That can increase the depth of a story. You can weave things in. You don't like that terminology. Well, I think you've come to it.
I'm not against it.
Yeah, I think you've realized, the more you've written, the more you've realized that weaving in that theme can add depth to a story.
Yeah, and then I mean, deem it. I can't talk. But
I've been not talking for quite a while now, so it's your turn.
All right. Deepen the connections between your characters by having them discover similar values, which kind of goes along with theme there. Have them have similar goals. Show this through dialogue, your tone, body language, actions, etc. But the point is that they share connections, they share values, they share themes.
Well, I mean, another way to add depth is to have them have contrasting themes and goals.
Yeah.
When you have one character that wants this and one character that wants this, it gives your reader depth to see, oh, there's two sides to this story. That's depth in and of itself. Yeah.
No, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Which kind of ties into my next point, which is increase conflict between characters by showing opposing goals and values through that same thing. You can use dialogue, body language, tone of voice, facial expressions, actions, etc. Like you, just by showing how characters interact with each other, how they react to each other, how they oppose each other, can add a lot of depth to your story.
I agree. Yeah. Give your character opinions. Abortion, whatever the opinions are, give them different opinions. That adds depth to a world too.
Right.
Risk writing long to go deep. You can always go back and take out. I like the free writing. There's a lot to be said for that. Editing is a huge thing.
Yeah.
Better to write 1,000 words and then cut 900 of them and come up with that 100 words that are brilliant than to, you just want that depth. You're laughing at me again.
I'm not laughing.
I am.
No.
I am unable to make complete sentences at this point.
I'm not laughing. I'm not I'm not laughing. Well, I am now, but I wasn't laughing before. I was amused because we have differing opinions on that. So you say to write longer and cut, whereas I typically write more skeletal and then add in. And so the way that I do that is, it is skeletal. And it's, he walked to the door, and I go back and I'm like, well, how can I say this and get across a lot more about this character as is he stomping? Is he, tossing a glare? Is he saying something over his shoulder? I go back and I add in that depth as opposed to I cut things.
Y'all, my daughter is brilliant.
What? Thank you.
That is a very good point. I mean, and there are different ways of writing.
Yeah.
That is.
I think so too, and I don't think that there's a correct way to do it. I don't think that the way that I do it should be for everybody by any means.
Right.
I have found what works for me, and that typically is I go back and look at a sentence that I've written that is very simple, and I say, well, is there something more to this sentence, or is it good as is? And that's typically how I do my rewrites, is I look at what I've written and I'm like, well, I could be getting across his thoughts here because he's very angry, and I don't really show that with his actions. So I'm going to add a lot more detail and a lot more potentially thought on his part to get across what I'm trying to portray to the reader.
Wow, you're just clever.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I don't know that there's, like you said, there's no wrong way and right way to write.
Right.
Everybody is different.
Yeah.
But these are just things to keep in mind when you're trying to add depth. I have been told this is very shallow. This is, when beta readers read it, they're like, I need more. I want more. So yeah, it's something that we all as writers need to be very aware of and to think about doing. And hopefully we've given you some hints on how to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. That is all the notes that I have for today.
Me too.
I do have an interview question. I do.
Okay.
Which work of yours do you think has the most depth?
Oh, that's a hard one. Because I love freaking fairies. That's the one that I am 100% dedicated to. I think it's ready to publish. I think it's ready to go. But I don't know that it has depth per se. It's a very funny, light novel.
Yeah.
It does have depth in that we get to know the characters and all of that, but I don't know that it's a deep, moving, intricate.
I think it is though, because you talk about the different courts that you have with the Fae, but you don't explain it.
Which is coming later.
Right, but I think that adds depth. We know that there's something more there. There's more to the Fae than what we're shown in book one.
That would be the innuendo you were talking about.
Yeah, hints and innuendos. I think there's a lot more to Beck too. I think we'll see a lot more of her, a lot more of what she's capable of in incoming novels. So
yeah, what's interesting with Beck is that I hint at we don't know who her dad is, and so I feel like my writers might be thinking, my readers might be thinking, wow, she's gonna end up being magic.
Yeah,
which I don't plan on doing, but
right.
We don't know.
You can't say that. That's spoilers.
Okay, I'll cut that out. I mean, I don't know yet what I'm going to do with her.
Right. Yeah, but I would disagree that there isn't as much depth there, because I think there is. I think there's a lot more to that world that you've created, and even though it's like a light, funny, comedic read, I think there is more there to dissect.
You think it's got depth, really? I just feel like it's this skip along the top thing. I'm worried about that.
No, I think it's fine.
Interesting. What about you?
Good. I think probably Louis and Delaney. It has a lot of depth with it. There's a lot of depth with the book that I'm writing right now. There's a lot that goes on.
What about Mac?
Mac has depth. I think there's depth to it.
I agree. I agree. All of your books, I think, have depth. There has never been an issue for me reading your book Well, I mean, other than the first draft, I mean, which
Right.
that's how you write. But when you've gotten that, in fact, I think that you're ready at a certain level, like your Aiden book, and you are still going in and adding depth to that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think my Aiden book will also have a lot of depth just because of what I'm planning for that world. I already know what I want out of that world. I know what that world is. I know the characters. I think it will also have a lot of depth. I have so many plans for those characters,
To
and I want to do
me,
them justice.
the Aiden book is most similar. If I had to compare it to a book that's out there, it is the most similar to the Mercy Thompson series.
I don't think it will be anymore once you read my new one.
But that's not a bad thing. I know
No,
you don't.
I
I
agree.
know you don't want to be, I'm the same as she is. But there is so much good writing and good technique in that Mercy Thompson series that I think yours. That's why I compare them, not because of the storyline. It doesn't
Right.
have anything to do with the storyline. But if anybody likes Mercy Thompson, they're going to love the Aiden series.
Well, thank you. I
I
appreciate
mean,
that.
it's not like I can compare Mercy Thompson to your Louis and Delaney. They are not. No, that's not.
Right.
I would never say, oh, if you love Mercy Thompson, you're going to love Louis and Delaney. They are totally different. But if I can see Aiden being, if you love Mercy Thompson, then you're going to love Aiden.
That's fair. I
Yeah.
think when it comes to which work of mine has the most depth, it really might be the book that I'm working on now, just because of the plans that I have for it, and I am putting a lot of hints and innuendos in book one.
If I had to compare your work that you're working on now to a series, I would compare it to Kresley Cole.
Yeah.
Her
Only not in terms of like Kresley Cole writes romance, but my book is more about, it shifts characters.
Kresley Cole's depth, when
Yeah.
talking about depth in this series, is brilliant.
Yeah.
And yours, to me, when I'm looking at, series to compare things to, not because it's romance, yours is not that, but the
Right.
depth of that Aura series that you're writing is Kresley Cole's universe.
Well, that's high praise. Thank you very much.
Well, I mean, I am your mother, but I don't want
Well,
people
yeah.
to think that that's why. I mean, guys, she is truly brilliant. I am so proud to have a daughter who can write like she does. And someday I'll be able to say, that's my daughter. She's fabulous. Because I might never get there. I don't know.
I think you will. You've got good writing too, and I think you've got somewhere to go. And
I hope
even
so.
if you especially with if you decide to go to the indie author route, boom, that's my mom. She's written these books. Go check them out.
And they're published. I mean, and I am seriously thinking about it. Although I have still, I hate that my real world life gets in the way. I had that agent want my book from that Twitter pitch we did, and I haven't had time to get it to her. And she's going to think I'm not interested because I haven't gotten it to her. But I'm sorry, I have a real. I mean, I do
Day
child
job.
support. Writing is a real job, but I have people who are counting on me to get support for their children to be able to survive, and I have to do that job.
Yeah.
So anyway, I did not do the extra again.
Outro.
The outro.
Go check out our website, eatdrinkwritepodcast.com. All of our social media is there. We have Facebook, we have Twitter, pretty much anything, any platform that you guys follow. We also have a Patreon, patreon.com/EDW podcast. We do have a Patreon. We are also adding content. We've decided to start a newsletter. So we have created a newsletter. It includes things like Twitter pitches, dates, kind of thing.
I posted our newsletter for our patrons.
Oh, fantastic!
I did that today.
Woo! So we've got our newsletter there. We're gonna, anything that we talk about in terms of forms that I've created or that Mom has created, we will post there. Anything like that. And we really appreciate you guys for listening to us and supporting us. It's awesome doing this. We have a really great time doing it. Half the time we're drunk, so it's fantastic.
We love to, what is our little slogan? We love to eat, drink, and talk. So
yes,
come listen.
absolutely. Thank you guys.
Have a drink with us and listen. Love you guys. Thank you so much.
Thanks.